1994 was the year of the dog, and like 1970, had Robert Plant and Jimmy Page working out acoustic numbers for a long-awaited collaboration of the two most popular members of Led Zeppelin. I was in first grade back then, so in order to get the proper 90s feel for this very special episode, I went back and watched a 1994 VHS that I memorized as a kid. No, it's not The Lion King, but a 4x4 expedition documentary. Warren's 1994 Transylvania Trophy, shot in the rural areas of Ukraine, captivated my imagination. I know every word of dialogue, image, and song from it. My uncle was into 4x4 vehicles. Yeah, the same uncle who got me into Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Deep Purple, and Led Zeppelin. Where most 4x4 customers got the famous Camel Trophy VHS releases, my uncle got the Transylvania Trophy one as a gift from an auto parts store. Fast forward to my high school days of carrying my guitar case around searching for another place to play. I was still a couple of years away from electric ventures, meaning the unplugged format was my life. The naked sound of nylon strings was brutally honest. It revealed your strengths and weaknesses. It was the best motivation to keep practicing. I was the worst party guitarist ever. I didn't do song requests. I just wanted to play some Zeppelin bits and my own 6-string improvisations. The year was 2002, and one MTV Unplugged release was huge at the time. Rock band La Ley from Chile got constant rotation on radio and television. Record stores were filled with promotional material, and my classmates asked me to play stuff from the album, which I of course refused. While working on this script, I realized why I wasn't really excited about MTV's Unplugged. Bands turning their electric offerings into acoustic rearrangements was a bit of a turnoff for me. As a musician born in Latin America, the heritage of guitar music is vast, ranging on different levels of complexity, so the sound of guitar strings really speak to the collective mind. My first guitar lessons from my grandfather was not folk nor skiffle, but Latin and Spanish guitar rhythms, arpeggios and licks. Also, as a classical guitar student, I enjoy listening to the Spanish guitar CD collection. CD number 1 was my favorite, with composer Francisco Tárrega with Capricho Árabe, a piece I became obsessed with and managed to learn. In the modern music field, my definition of great unplugged albums was the sounds of Spanish flamenco rock stars Camarón de la Isla and Paco de Lucia, whose energy mirrors that of Page and Plant, by the way. And one record I spent countless hours studying and learning from, the famous Friday Night at San Francisco with Al Di Meola, John McLaughlin, and Paco de Lucia once again. This 1980 release was the ultimate destination for my teenage self. So whenever I listened to an MTV Unplugged show bit here and there, I didn't get what all the fuzz was about. It was one thing to listen to a rock band do an acoustic track on their albums, which I enjoyed. It was quite different to hear a watered down version of an electric piece. So back then I only had the first 4 Zeppelin albums plus Latter Days. I got to pick a VHS for my birthday. The guy at the record store had The Song Remains the Same and something by the name of Unledded, which he tried to sell as a great Led Zeppelin reunion. I chose the former, but the image of Page and Plant together got stuck in my head. Evenings of precious internet cafe visits led me to a shocking discovery. Unledded was an unplugged record by Jimmy Page and Robert Plant with an Egyptian orchestra. I was sold and got the album 2 weeks later. Page and Plant looked weird on the CD cover. The photograph's angle made them look like totally different dudes. The VHS cover was better. Yes guys, I got Unledded before completing my Zeppelin discography. Don't judge me. I put it on my CD player and I was off to Middle Eastern landscapes. The track listing was mostly familiar. I recognized the first tune. It was Nobody's Fault But Mine from Latter Days, with a different arrangement. I enjoyed the slow tempo construction and wanted to know who was the drummer next to John Paul Jones. I read the booklet credits. Wait a minute, this was another Jones? Who was Charlie Jones? Where the hell was Jonesy? Who's Michael Lee? Didn't ring a bell. As I heard the live renditions of Zeppelin classics, I wondered how the show actually looked on VHS. I really like Friends. No Quarter was disturbing and not something I would listen to at night. Four Sticks was cool, but of course, Kashmir was the heavy hitter and worth the price of admission. As a teenager, I thought the non-Zeppelin songs on the album were strange, like a hit-and-miss parade of sketches. I managed to watch the concert years later through a borrowed DVD, and it somewhat changed my perspective. I understood the context and dynamics of the experience. To watch Page and Plant relive their glory days was quite fun, yet I'll admit I was somewhat bored for the most. No matter the hard rock intentions of Thank You, What Is and What Should Never Be, and Since I've Been Loving You, I missed Led Zeppelin as a band. Not having John Paul Jones there was hard to process. Just as I was ready to hit stop, the Rain song began. I felt shivers down my spine, a sublime moment, beauty beyond words. I asked myself the question, why on earth was the Rain song not included on the original CD release? Are you kidding me? With no updated CD version available on record stores at the time, I did what I'm sure many fans did. I ripped the DVD's audio tracks and got the Rain song on my Winamp playlist. I played it to death. It became the only song from Unledded I revisited besides Kashmir. My 2005-2007 musical period created one of the strongest friendships to date. My brother from another mother. I met him at a 2000 call center job interview where he hired me on the basis of my Led Zeppelin related email address. Past the interview, we rushed to the parking lot where he showed me his car with a huge Led Zeppelin bumper sticker. We bonded through our love and admiration for Zeppelin's music. The Rain song was a personal favorite at the time. He asked me if I heard Page & Plant's Unledded. I said, yeah dude, of course. But did you know the Rain song was not on the original release? He looked at me and replied, you're kidding, right? Now you ruined the record for me. We laughed out loud in call center English with subtitles and got back to work. One day he drove past my house and showed me a percussion instrument he had in his trunk. I was thrilled. It was the sound of Kashmir 1994. We jammed at a park nearby for a couple of hours. Egyptian beats and my drop D tuning acoustic guitar was our own unplugged laboratory for experimentation. My friend recorded some percussion segments at my house and I added guitar layers after. I burned a CDR of our session. We named it Rockworks and it became our soundtrack for a while. Years went by and life happened. I slowly forgot about Page & Plant's project despite local fans mentioning the album when talking about Led Zeppelin. Fast forward 2010, I took a bunch of my old CDs to sell downtown in exchange for money to get new records. I said goodbye to Unledded. Yes, I sold a Page & Plant release. And here I am, narrating the post-Led Zeppelin 1990 series, coming back to an album I hadn't really listened to in almost 15 years. Revisiting its sights and sounds brought back memories. Some good, some bad, some naive, and some I still don't understand. Maybe it reminds me of the innocence of the unplugged years of my guitar journey, and how those years now seem distant. Maybe Unledded is a reminder of the yin-yang of life. No matter the best intentions, time keeps moving like an impossible truth to fully comprehend. Maybe Unledded is wishful thinking of orchestral hopes for a friendship that never recovered after 1977. The more I've done my research on the human side of Led Zeppelin, the stranger this record becomes. I would revisit this with no provision but an open face to rediscover great moments I've missed before. Its cultural significance deserves to be discussed. A visionary album that saw into the future, past and present of classic rock, like no reunion venture prior. A moment in history that reunited Jimmy Page and Robert Plant to fulfill a lifelong dream of Eastern world music, working in harmony with Western traditions. A groundbreaking show for MTV's Unplugged series. Page & Plant's comeback past their solo albums and years of personal beef. A triumphant return to riches and a bittersweet moment for hardcore Zeppelin fans who wish these guys found John Paul Jones's number before recording the show in August 1994. In the end, it was nobody's fault but them. This is the making of No Quarter. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, Unledded.
Also, thank you, my friends, for finally remembering my phone number. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Was the exclusion of John Paul Jones an obvious sort of...
Shut up. No. An obvious. Oh, it don't matter. It's just that Jonesy was busy and we're busy.
4, 3, happy 1994!
The story begins with Robert Plant's last part of the Fate of Nations tour. So what do you do when your album is not selling like it should? You play Latin America, of course. And I was born and raised here, so I can make that comment. Joined by his 1993 US tour band of Ennis Sivan, Francis Dunnery, Charlie Jones, Phil Johnston, and Michael Lee, Robert played 5 shows in January, visiting Brazil, Argentina, Venezuela, and Mexico. Well, I should say the names in Spanish, right? Brasil, Argentina, Venezuela, y México. Roberto Planta en vivo. y su álbum El Destino de las Naciones. The average setlist and musical style remained pretty much the same, leaning heavily into Led Zeppelin covers. These shows were received with crazy enthusiasm from the crowds who watched the closest thing to Led Zeppelin. Robert's solo catalog hits were praised as well by the passionate fans of Latin America. This is a region of extremes. People either love you or hate you. There's no middle ground in the affairs of the heart.
After 25 years of traveling the world, it's the first time I've come to Brazil.
Depois de 25 anos viajando pelo mundo, é a primeira vez que eu venho ao Brasil.
And I wish to apologize.
Eu gostaria de me desculpar por isso.
I don't think I've ever experienced so much emotion and so much warmth from an audience. It's really great to be with you.
Eu acho que eu nunca senti tanta emoção numa plateia tão linda quanto essa.
It's hard to imagine Fate of Nations was not selling millions, and here he was, rocking it out on stage in top physical shape at age 45, with a band that could really do it all. Still, the show missed a conceptual storyline. Despite his energy, Robert looked mentally drained in the same way his 1991 self needed a break. The Machine for Page and Plant's Unplugged show was set in motion. If this is your first time watching my channel, I recommend checking episodes 5 and 6 of this 1990 series for an overview of the events of 1993 that played a key role in the making of Unledded.
De volta ao palco da apoteose. E tem mais, é o Bis do Robert Plant, ao vivo.
Here's some information on the venues played by Robert Plant and his band. Both shows in Brazil were a part of the Hollywood Rock Music Festival, which took place in Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro from 1988 until 1996. The 1993 edition had Red Hot Chili Peppers, Nirvana, and Simply Red as headliners. The 1994 lineup included Aerosmith, Whitney Houston, Poison, Ugly Kid Joe, Live, and Sepultura, among others. Robert's show in Argentina was at the Jose Amalfitani Stadium, which held many music events since 1981, with Queen the first group to play there. 1993 saw performances by Metallica, Santana, Luis Miguel, and Peter Gabriel.
Señoras, señoritas and niñas, especially niñas, it's 25 años at last I come here. It's a great pleasure to be in Mexico City. I know that every artist who comes here must say the same thing, but it took 25 years to come here. So, I'm very sorry, I'll come back sooner next time. Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about 1994. Was it the best year for Page and Plant's project to take place? Absolutely. Top 10 highest selling albums that year included Green Day's Dookie, Pink Floyd's The Division Bell, and Nirvana's insanely popular MTV Unplugged in New York had almost 13 million copies sold. Add in the Eagles' own Unplugged comeback album, Hell Freezes Over, with sales of almost 11 million, and you got yourself a good market for rock and roll. It was the right time to release acoustic and electric textures next to Soundgarden, both Forrest Gump and Pulp Fiction soundtracks, Stone Temple Pilots, Pearl Jam, Dave Matthews Band, Oasis, Eric Clapton, the Rolling Stones, Tom Petty, Alice in Chains, Portishead, and Jeff Buckley. Here's a fun fact for the Coverdale page fans out there. Historic sales for Whitesnake's 1994 Greatest Hits album outsold No Quarter by 200,000 units. Good job, David Coverdale.
From a distance, it could have been any morning in Los Angeles. It was not. This is the busiest freeway in the United States, Interstate 10, the Santa Monica Freeway. This morning at 7:30, rush hour, it looked like this. The earthquake had buckled large sections of the freeway. It was undrivable. Later in the day, crews would begin dismantling the overpasses. This spectacular home on the cliff was now partly on the hillside. The structures made of brick were hit hard. The State Beach Cafe crumpled.
I mean, where else can you fill the tank, get directions, and microwave a burrito all at the same time? And it's smart to use MasterCard because you can keep track of all your spending with one useful monthly statement, which really is ideal. So I guess the gas station is Nirvana.
Sessions for Unledded began in February 1994 with Page and Plant rehearsing at Depot Studios near King's Cross in London using a series of drum loops. The Middle Eastern music roots of Unledded can be traced back to several chapters of the Led Zeppelin story, which makes the final song selection for their show quite logical. One notable example of pre-Unledded vibes is Black Mountain Side from 1969, with Jimmy playing alongside tabla player Viram Jasani. Page and Plant's visits to India in late 1971 and 1972 played a huge part in Unledded's sound design. They were ahead of their time trying to blend rock and roll harmonies with Eastern rhythms. The recording of these sessions proves it. It is also relevant to mention Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones and his album from 1971. Brian Jones presents The Pipes of Pan at Jujuka, featuring a cast of Moroccan musicians Brian met and recorded in 1968 with the help of sound engineer George Kiantz. You may remember his name from his work on Houses of the Holy. Jones edited the tapes with the aid of sound effects and clever cuts. Brian wanted to add this musical style to the Rolling Stones' repertoire. Robert Plant's solo career tapped into world music as well, with Mighty Nirvana's Watching You, and Fate of Nations' own Calling to You, and Down to the Sea. It seemed playing with an Egyptian orchestra was the natural step of where Plant tried to go before. Some of the new songs featured on Unledded were developed from these musical roots, in an attempt to recapture a long-awaited 70s creative wish that never happened. The demo for Wonderful One was laid down on tape at Mickey Mouse's RAK recording studios in St. John's Wood, London. Fun fact, Hot Chocolate's Everyone's a Winner single was recorded here as well. I really like this song. With a classic Jimmy Page alternate tuning, Wonderful One was written in the spring of 1994, and the first time the duo wrote a song together since 1988's The Only One from Outrider. Now let's remember past Led Zeppelin's 5 shows at Earl's Court 1975. Robert Plant took his family on vacation to Morocco, with Jimmy Page joining them in Marrakesh around June. They both discussed the possibility of recording music featuring the ambient sounds of the city. They got their chance 19 years later thanks to the chain reaction effect of manager Bill Kirbishley, MTV, and David Coverdale. Page and Plant chose 13 Led Zeppelin songs that showcase the light and shade aspects of their music. Performing an unplugged or acoustic set was not news for Jimmy and Robert. Led Zeppelin played these in 1970, 1971, 1972, 1975, and 1977. Their body of work and live concerts work as a perfect preparation to get the most out of the unplugged format. With so many possibilities, I bet it was hard coming up with a final selection. I wonder why 10 Years Gone was not chosen. The song has Unplugged written all over. So let's take a look at the 13 Zeppelin songs they went for. Thank You and What Is and What Should Never Be from Zeppelin 2. Both songs were crowd favorites on Plant's 1993 tour. They worked great for him. Jimmy hadn't played these since the 70s. 4 songs from Led Zeppelin 3 is a no-brainer. This was their unplugged album in a way. Strangely enough, all 4 songs were a first time for both Page and Plant since Led Zeppelin's demise in 1980. Next, 3 cuts from Zeppelin 4, The Battle of Evermore, 4 Sticks, and When the Levee Breaks. None of these songs had been revisited by Page nor Plant's solo careers back then. No Quarter and The Rain song from Houses of the Holy were 2 great picks that added progressive rock variety to the proposed format. Plant had only revisited No Quarter on his Manic Nirvana tour from 1990. Jimmy hadn't played these tracks since Snapworth 1979 and Berlin 1980 for the Rain song. Next was the obvious inclusion of Kashmir, which Plant performed for the last time at the 1988 Atlantic Records reunion. Page played this one on his most recent Japanese tour with David Coverdale in 1993. Last but not least, Nobody's Fault But Mine from Presence was reworked into a new idea closer to the original blues version. Page had not performed this one since Berlin 1980. Plant revisited the song for his 1988 and 1990 solo tours. Looking at these songs, I couldn't help to think of the acoustic Zeppelin tracks they could have done. Zeppelin 1 had Babe I'm Gonna Leave You, but judging from Robert Plant's 1993 takes on this one, the result is quite uneven. It was too risky for Unplugged. Your Time Is Gonna Come had potential, but it was more of a keyboard showcase. Black Mountain Side was Jimmy's guitar piece. A Zeppelin library version was released on box set 1, and it worked for his 1998 solo tour and 1993 gigs with Coverdale. Being Unledded a partnership with Plant, I guess songs with vocals were priority 1. Zeppelin 2 had Ramble On, which Robert played to death on his Fate of Nations tour. He was probably tired of it. Zeppelin 3 had Tangerine, Bernard Stomp, and Hats Off to Roy Harper. With them choosing 4 cuts from the album already, I guess they didn't feel it was necessary. Zeppelin 4 had Stairway to Heaven, and we know Stairway was a no-go zone for Robert. Going to California was played on Robert's tours of 1988, 1990, and 1993. It's safe to say he had enough, and once again, he seemed to for his vocals on the high range part. Houses of the Holy had Over the Hills and Far Away, which Robert had to rearrange his vocals for after 1973 and played just once in 1990. Jimmy Page performed this one on his 1988 tour with great results thanks to bandmate John Miles going for the original high-range vocals. Physical Graffiti had In the Light, which could have worked wonders with the Egyptian orchestra, but maybe it would have sounded too much like the intro for Kashmir. Run Out R could have been a nice Jimmy Page instrumental showcase. Down by the Seaside was a perfect song for Unplugged, but again, maybe too much of a B-side. Robert Plant ended up recording an intimate version of it with Tori Amos for the 1995 Led Zeppelin tribute album Encomium. I have to insist in saying 10 Years Gone was the ultimate song for MTV's Unplugged. This is a big what if. I would like to know your thoughts on this one. Feel free to share it on the comment section below. Boogie with Stu and Black Country Woman I believe were just too playful for the retrospective mood of Unledded. Plant's 1990 live version of Black Country Woman proves it. Knowing these guys worked out a new version for Nobody's Fault But Mine, I believe Present's T for One was Unplugged material. Into the Outdoor was ignored, of course. I'd say In the Evening stood a chance, and well, they played an Egyptian orchestra version of it in 1995 to great effect. I really wish they played All My Love with orchestra, keyboards, bass, and acoustic guitar. Coda had Poor Tom, which was nice, but what if they played Hey Hey What Can I Do? It was on the remaster set from 1990. If you ask me, I think it would have boosted sales for their box sets. So what about the new songs on Unledded? More on them later on.
Sounds like the sort of thing I'd do.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you're that tough to deal with.
The method is neither here nor there. It's the end result that counts.
The Sex Pistols were created by eccentric manager Malcolm McLaren, a man who had always been fascinated by extremes in pop culture. McLaren's latest project is a movie based on the life of Peter Grant.
He led a life that carried through rock and roll and turned it into a business that was far-reaching, so far-reaching that England itself earned so much money from it, it became almost the #1 export.
Mr. Malcolm McLaren wants to make this movie about you called Hammer of the Gods.
No, not Hammer of the Gods. I'd never let it be called that. I would disassociate it from that book. You know? But it's always, look, the music is the main thing. If the music isn't there, we're all out of work, aren't we?
Okay, the moment of truth. Why wasn't John Paul Jones called in for No Quarter Unledded? Unjonesed. This is the making of losing John Paul Jones's phone number. So first off, maybe Page and Plant's management looked for John Paul Jones's name on the phone book instead of his actual name, John Baldwin. Now, in all seriousness, there's so many ways to answer this question. It's a controversial breaking point in the Zeppelin world. Some of us think he had to be there, others don't, and a small portion thinks at least Charlie Jones shared the same last name. Was John Paul Jones available in 1994? Yes, he was. What Robert Plant said about Jones being busy was not a good reason. Then we have the theory of John Paul Jones not being present at Carrick Plant's funeral in 1977. As we know, he was on a vacation trip with his family in the US when Robert got the devastating news, so Jones was not within reach. If Jones's absence from the funeral was the reason that got him snubbed from Unledded, well, Jimmy Page nor Peter Grant attended Carrick's funeral, so if Plant was consistent on this reason, Jimmy Page shouldn't be Unledded either. Of all the arguments and explanations I've heard on this topic, there's something very important that's usually missed when looking at the big picture. Back in 1993, MTV approached Robert Plant, the solo artist, to do Unplugged. He could have done it with his band at the time. He had 6 solo albums worth of songs to choose from. Both Kevin McMichael and Francis Dunnery were capable of performing any Zeppelin number Robert wanted. Now, as I discussed in episode 5, Plant's management knew it was a numbers game, thus calling Jimmy Page was the right business move. Just look at Rod Stewart's 1993 Unplugged. Having former bandmate Ronnie Wood on board was a good idea for nostalgia and album sales of 4 million units. Although I am on John Paul Jones' side, I can acknowledge he was never a part of the MTV equation to begin with. If you really look into it, this was Robert Plant's show featuring Jimmy Page. Because MTV did not approach Robert with the Led Zeppelin reunion idea, he agreed to do it. They played on his solo career ego. This is the only way Unplugged had a shot with Plant in the 1990s. Imagine if MTV had Page, Jones, and Jason Bonham on board. Robert Plant would have shot the whole thing down like the almost reunions of 1986 and 1991. It was a power game with Robert. He had MTV on his side. It was his rules, his way or the highway, with Jimmy Page, the eternal business partner, who couldn't say no. The rhythm section of Michael Lee and Charlie Jones ensured the 1993 Robert Plant sound remained the same, rather than attempting to recreate the original Zeppelin vibe, a place where Robert didn't want to go out of impossible expectations. Charlie Jones was not only Plant's son-in-law since 1991, he was his bass player since 1987 and a key contributor on his last 3 albums. Taking him off the project didn't make sense. Now let's pretend John Paul Jones was a part of Unledded. MTV and record label executives would have pushed for the Led Zeppelin name to be there. An album title like Page, Plant, and Jones sounds like former Yes bandmates' 1989 album, Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe. You just want to call it Yes. Having John Paul Jones on board meant that new songs written for the show, City Don't Cry, Yalla, The Truth Explodes, Wawa, and Wonderful One, would have been scrutinized as new Led Zeppelin tracks, which is a conflict of interest for their classic discography. But what about Jason Bonham, you may ask? Well, he was busy, and Robert Plant had no reason to turn this into a reunion. As much as I love Jason's playing, no new original compositions should be ever released under the name Led Zeppelin without John Bonham. Jason Bonham played occasional gigs in 1994 with none other than Paul Rodgers for a strange but interesting post-Led Zeppelin collaboration. Having John Bonham's son play with former Bad Company's frontman was quite a swan song full circle. Jason reformed his old band Bonham in 1994. They replaced the previous singer with Marty Fredriksson and changed their name to Motherland. The band released their only album by the name of Peace for Me through Sony Music, a 10-track record very much inspired by the grunge movement while retaining some of the inevitable Led Zeppelin influences. Think Stone Temple Pilots and Soundgarden meets Black Dog. Instrumentally speaking, it is worth checking out. It is not a classic album, but Jason's drumming is powerful and very groovy, man. So back to Unplugged. To no fault of his own, bringing John Paul Jones into the mix had the danger of turning the whole thing into Live Aid 1985 Part 2. Now, because of how this Page and Plant collaboration transformed into several world tours, not letting John Paul Jones know about it was the problem. The right thing to do was explain the situation like former bandmates and the business reasons behind it. The fact they avoided the conversation and let Jones find out through the press is disappointing to say the least. There's no excuse for this behavior, period. We can understand John Paul Jones not being the right political fit for MTV's Unplugged, but a world tour that morphed into an almost Led Zeppelin only setlist? Come on guys. Like Norm Macdonald said, what bothers me is the hypocrisy of it. Here's some numbers for you. Do you know how many times Page and Plant played the new songs written for Unledded on their world tours 1995 to 1998? Okay, here goes. City Don't Cry, 0 times. Wawa, 0 times. Yalla, 3 times. The Truth Explodes, 34 times. And Wonderful One, 16 times. So let's think that Robert Plant wanted to cap his solo career sound and that's why they didn't call Jones. Here's one shocking bit of information for you. Only one Robert Plant solo album track was performed on the 1995 tour. None after that. I repeat, none. The numbers speak for themselves. You know how many times they played Led Zeppelin songs? 2,332 times. That's 2,332 chances of reuniting with a legendary musician and John Bonham's rhythm soulmate at least once for the fans to enjoy, and no action took place. This topic triggers me, of course. Getting snubbed by fellow musicians is something I've seen and experienced firsthand. Why some people avoid setting their record straight and just tell you things up front is a lesson I've learned the hard way. Why a musical genius like John Paul Jones deserved to find out through the newspaper is insulting. Jones's post-Led Zeppelin resume at the time speaks for itself. Paul McCartney, Brian Eno twice, The Mission, John Renburn, Redbird, La Fuga del Baus, bass on one track for Manu Katché's solo album, string arrangements for Cinderella and R.E.M., Peter Gabriel, Butthole Surfers. This is what an artist looks like. The best musician in Led Zeppelin is a living example of evolution, innovation, and teamwork of the highest order. He is the unsung hero of the Led Zeppelin story. Next to Paul McCartney, the true architects of bass in classic rock. Yes, there's John Entwistle, Chris Squire, and Geddy Lee, but none of them had John Baldwin's musical background. His multi-instrumentalist and arranger credits put his work above the usual parameters by which a virtuoso musician is measured. John Paul Jones elevates the projects he's involved with, and like Paul McCartney said, take a sad song and make it better. Okay, rant over. I'm gonna drink some cranberry juice so I can chill. Page and Plant's No John Paul Jones Unplugged discourse lost all credibility when the world realized the money-making machine that unraveled past the MTV show. From the outside, it looks like splitting the Zeppelin Nostalgia Prize in two as opposed to three partners. A Page, Plant and Jones world tour will always be the greatest what if in the post-Led Zeppelin story. Okay, so I know we haven't got to the actual recording of Unledded yet, but I just wanted to address this topic first. I assure you my musical analysis of this show leaves out the John Paul Jones debacle. I can appreciate it for what it is. A reunion of two Led Zeppelin bandmates and an album title in direct reference to one of John Paul Jones's finest compositions. No quarter, unleaded, unjonesed, uninvited.
I'm Kurt Loder with MTV News. Nirvana leader Kurt Cobain, an extraordinarily gifted singer, songwriter, and guitarist, was found dead in Seattle on Friday morning, apparently a suicide. His body was found at a house that he owned but didn't live in anymore on Lake Washington Boulevard. He was discovered by an electrician who was doing some work on the house. He had been killed by a blast to the head from a 12-gauge shotgun, and a suicide note found nearby, according to the electrician who found him, ended with the words, "I love you, I love you, I love you."
A young guitarist at that time that was session guitarist in Britain, just playing on pretty much every really good record that came out around that time. And as a young vocalist who was working with Alexis Corner, and said at that time how much confidence Alexis gave him to carry on to do what he subsequently achieved in his musical career so far.
Jimmy Page and Robert Plant.
April 17th, 1994, both Jimmy Page and Robert Plant performed at the Alexis Corner Memorial Benefit Show at the Buxton Opera House in London. This pre-Unledded gig alongside Charlie Jones on bass and Michael Lee on drums had everyone speculating for a collaboration. Songs played that evening included Jamaica, I Can't Quit You Baby, I've Been Down So Long, and Train Kept A-Rollin'. April 25th and 26th, 1994. The Eagles recorded their comeback and second live album, Hell Freezes Over. Like Led Zeppelin, they broke up in 1980, and the 14-year-long wait ended with a long-anticipated 71-day tour that became one of the most expensive concert tickets of 1994. Released on November 8th, it paved the way for future Page and Plant success with Unledded. David Coverdale went on a small 41-day tour with a last-minute lineup for Whitesnake. One of the songs from these concert series stands out past the events of 1993. David's rendition of Don't Leave Me This Way, a song they played 24 times on this tour, is quite touching and sad. Like the ashes past the battle, the what-if questions arise, and the memory of Coverdale Page remains.